Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of Cover to Cover. You're here with Mo,
Andrea,
and Morgan.
And today we want to talk about literature that's mapped out, fan mail and unhelpful advice, how to get teenagers to read more, clickbait for literature, plus we have a fun video short for you, and Tiffany will join us for What's on My Nightstand. But first, we need to take a look at Tim Burton's The Nightmare Before Christmas.
Tim Burton's dark claymation picture, The Nightmare Before Christmas, touched the hearts of fans for the last 25 years. I can't believe it's been 25 years. And it became a cult classic. Fans can now rejoice as a sequel in book form has been announced.
The comic book publishers Tokyopop have secured the rights to the franchise and will be releasing a book titled Nightmare Before Christmas: Zero's Journey. This story will chronicle Zero the dog's adventures through Christmas Town, and the accompanying images are sure to be vibrant. The book will launch in the spring of 2018, so brush up on the original in the meantime.
I haven't seen that movie in forever, and I have to admit, I do love it, and every time I see images from it or, memorabilia, I do have, a soft place in my heart for it, but I kind of abandoned that fandom, and I'm excited to have a jumping back in point.
Okay, but we were discussing this, really cute dog, and y'all were all in for that.
Zero.
So tell us about Zero.
Zero's like a little ghost dog, right? Is he not the cutest dog ever?
He is, and we know that we love dog stories. Mm-hmm. So I think it'll be a hit because dog stories typically are a hit. So
yeah,
I love
so cute.
I just love how they're playing on the hero's journey in this. That is
Zero's
so
journey.
clever.
Zero the hero. Well, as you guys know, comics and graphic novels and picture books are gaining popularity in the literary community, and it's really interesting to trace that trend of literature through time. And Martin Vargic is a writer and artist who wrote a book to help us visualize literature as a map, literature as its own little world.
Martin Vargic is a young Slovakian student who began creating and publishing amusing maps based on things such as tractors per capita. One of the most impressive maps he has created is known as the Map of Literature. This map sketches the geography of writing across time, periods, and styles. He assigns land masses to genres and movements. Literary movements become continents, authors become regions, and their works become cities. For example, you'll reach the Hunchback of Notre Dame in the land of Victor Hugo after you've crossed the sea of antagonists.
wow.
And of course, Karl Marx has his own island off the mainland of modern philosophy.
And then, of course, you have Walt Whitman's Island in a Sea of Sonnets. This map is an intense reminder of the wide world of literature and just how little we have explored. So, guys, it's time for us to get reading.
I love this idea of thinking of literature as this vast map for exploration because I really feel like we do kind of pigeonhole ourselves into a genre or a movement, especially in school, and we have to just focus really hard on that, like classics. That's one kind of area, but all those things are clustered there. But then way across the sea, you've got science fiction. You haven't even touched it yet. There's just so much to explore.
I know, it's just so crazy. He really has made a world of literature. Because we're always talking about it, but he made it, and I'm just saying, I call Austin land.
You can have Austin land, but I get to have a tourist visa. I need to be able to come in and visit.
I guess you can visit.
I would claim romance, but the only thing is that on the map, romance is the North Pole. It's the tip of Canada. I'm
it's got to melt your cold heart somehow.
It should be an island, tropical.
In the sun?
Yes.
Yeah.
In the sun, but it's really far north, so I don't know if that was on purpose.
Well,
that's where I'll go.
You guys feel free to come visit me in Fantasyland, where I will be residing in my mind palace at all times. And you guys know, wherever you might end up on this map, at least you'll be amongst great literature, no matter what, in the process. And another great way to connect with literature and authors, as you know, is through fan mail. E.B. White, author of Charlotte's Web and many other classics, of course, was an author who had a love-hate relationship with fan mail. But when he answered, he always had some good advice.
E.B. White once wrote to a librarian saying he loved receiving praise, but that fan mail simply took too much time, and it kept him from creativity. Nevertheless, he would respond, eventually. A letter has surfaced in which White gave some sort of unhelpful advice. When a fan named Mike asked what an author had to do before he could have his book published, White responded that the principal thing an author has to do is to write a good book. Then he has to send the manuscript to one publisher after another until he finds one who wants to publish it. I'm glad you like Stuart Little and Charlotte's Web, and thanks for writing.
We've been laughing about this letter all morning. It's so extremely unhelpful that is what he gave this friend.
It's like, it's so sarcastic. It's like, have you ever seen that site where someone asks you a question, how do I get published? And you do, let me Google that for you. And it sends them a link showing someone Googling their question. Yeah.
That's funny.
It is hilarious.
Oh my gosh.
Yes, and so that's what I feel like
This
he
was the early
doing.
version of that?
Yes.
Yeah.
I feel like every time I try to Google something on the internet, like I'm like, I have this problem or whatever, and what do I do with this? And people are like, oh, I have that same problem. I have that same problem. I have that. And there's like no one actually helping.
No answers?
Yeah.
I think it's similar to if I was like, how do you get to this park? And you just texted me like the Google Maps like directions. You can either take a car or you can ride a bus or you can walk. Like, well, obviously that's how I get to that place, but a little more information would be nice.
Well, let me just pause here for a second.
Okay.
His information actually is, what he said was good.
Maybe Mike didn't know. Somewhere Mike is still trying to write a good novel so he can get involved with.
What is a good novel? I mean, that's the way you do it with the traditional publishing anyway. You have to have a good book. You send it off. There's other ways to get published, just so all of you know. It's not that difficult, but it's pretty decent advice.
Yeah, I guess depends how you look at it.
Keep it simple.
But it's keeping me smiling all day.
Well, speaking of writing fan mail to authors, we have a fun video short here for you today, chronicling the journey of reaching out to your favorite author over and over again. So please enjoy Letters to Lemony Snicket.
Dear Lemony Snicket, or Daniel Handler, I haven't heard back from you in a while. Did you receive my last letter? Or the one before that? Or the one before that? Or, you know, the last 6,447 letters? I'm sure they just went to spam or something. Anyways, congrats on being an awesome, super wonderful, amazing, super successful author with the best children's books of all time. Sorry, J.K. Rowling. Your books just mean so much to me. They turned me into the extremely dedicated inventor I am today. I invented Super Camo, the world's first fully functioning, totally legit, super invisible suit. It's perfect for stalking, military purposes. So, those unfortunate events did have a happy ending. My success and our love. I got inspired when visiting your favorite coffee shop. You know, the one where you like your coffee with the cinnamon sprinkled on. They stopped letting me in for some reason. They said I couldn't be within 100 feet, so Super Camo happened. Anyway, I also went on my usual bookstore run to make sure I'm up on all of the Lemony Snicket pre-order lists. And a funny man showed up asking if I was who I was and served me some papers. Oh well, I'm sure it's just some misunderstanding. Who would try and get between us? We are of two minds, as you like to say. What if it was Count Olaf, perhaps? Anyway, I made you some cookies, so like anytime you want to give me your new address, XOXO, XOXO. The future Mrs. Daniel Handler. P.S. Our love is fireproof. Answer me back, please! P.P.S. Beatrice is dead, so it's just you and me now.
Well, we hope you got some really good tips from that video on how to reach out to your favorite authors. It can be a struggle. And another struggle that we are familiar with is getting teenagers interested in reading. Thankfully, there's some buzz right now with many writers offering an obvious solution.
Daniel Handler, the author who uses the pen name Lemony Snicket, has written an article for the New York Times about how to get teenagers, boys in particular, to read more. Hey, this is what he says. Just don't shy away from adult content and sex.
Handler feels like the growing statistic of teenage girls reading more than boys is distressing. He says authors are often asking themselves, what are boys interested in? It's a simple question with a simple answer, and more authors are looking to cater to this demographic to encourage reading. Handler sat down and reread the most influential books from his youth to discover what their connections had. The authors came from a wide range of decades and genres, but all of the stories had one thing in common. The content was graphic in a variety of ways. He was convinced this is the key to getting teenage boys to read, and he has written a new novel called All the Dirty Parts. To his frustration, the publishers are catering this to be an adult audience, which is not his intent. He's encouraging teenagers everywhere to pick up a copy and face the biology of life head on. The book will be out on August 29th.
So this is a subject that we have talked about before. It's censorship for people based on what categories you think they should be reading, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, how do we sift through all the books that we think young people should be reading?
Mm-hmm.
And Daniel Handler is an author who is so brilliant. He doesn't like censorship. He is so against censorship, and he used that a lot in his most famous books, A Series of Unfortunate Events. And he was using big words, and I mean, these are words that weren't typically used in children's books. So for him to use them, all of these editors and publishers were saying, hey, don't use this. But he was like, why not? So he wasn't really wanting to do kids' books in the beginning anyway. So I think it's great that he's taking this turn with this.
Maybe it's like that concept, dress for the job you want, read and write for the level that you want to be at, right? So yeah, so use big words in your book. If you want kids to know big words, you have to introduce big words to them, right? And
Yeah.
then they can ask their parents, well, what's this word? And they can say the ever famous line of, look it up in the dictionary.
Well, I think where he's going with this book is, I mean, there are all these books about love and like this very like fantasy love for teenagers, right? But he's talking about what's really happening in teenagers' life, where love is this really confusing idea, you know, especially now with the digital age and all that's going on. So I like where he's going with this book.
I guess at the end of the day, parents will make the decision of if they'll allow their kids to read this or not. There's some parents who will read everything first before giving it to their kids. There's some parents who will just make some assumption that something is bad or terrible. And then there's some that just, I'm glad you're reading. I don't know what it says, but at least you're reading a book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Let us know in the comments. If you have kids, if you have teenagers, would you let them read this book? Would you want to read it first, or would you just be happy that they're picking up a book?
and he made an interesting argument too, where he said, you know, we hide things from our kids, like Anais Nin is an author that he read a lot as a kid that influenced him heavily, and there are a lot of sexual undertones and themes and ideologies throughout the book, but it's really revered work that adults think is really pertinent reading. But we might not give our kids that, but we'll gladly hand over the Hunger Games where children are outright murdering each other left and right at the government's hand. So it's like, what's the dividing line? Like, is murdering children fine, but like sex, no thank you, they can't be exposed to that.
Well, I think my opinion with these books is it gives you a topic to discuss, you know? So more and more of these adult content books are spilling over to kids. So we talked about 13 Reasons Why before on the show, and that, I mean, is spilling over into our teenagers. And that gives you an opening for discussion. Your kids are going to be seeing all of this stuff anyway on the internet, you know, behind closed doors, and they're going to find it and run into it, or run into it with their friends. So wouldn't you rather have something to be able to discuss with them? And I think that's what literature does.
Yeah, it's like Morgan said, you guys let us know what you think and just always be talking about it so we can all get a better picture of it. And this idea of how to get people more interested in literature is always going to be a timeless issue. Mm-hmm. And a bookstore in Dallas is tackling that problem with a slightly different solution.
Wild Detectives is a Dallas-based bookstore that has found an acceptable use of clickbait. They have run campaigns posting clickbait articles to their Facebook page to get people to read literature. The setup is that they post an article with a clickbait headline such as, "British guy dies after selfie gone wrong," and when you click it, it links you to the digital version of The Picture of Dorian Gray. Or the headline, "You'll never guess what happens to a Kansas teen after the tornado destroys her home," and that'll link you to The Wizard of Oz. Or our favorite headline, "Backpacker had the worst trip of his life when Island Tribe attacked him with poop," which of course leads you to Gulliver's Travels.
Guys, all these books that these headliners link to are in the public domain, and the campaign has worked really well for Wild Detectives when they ran it. This is crazy. They saw a 150% increase in their Facebook page and 14,000% increase in traffic.
People love clickbait. And I love these headlines. I would absolutely
I know.
click on that. It's so funny. I think it's such a brilliant idea, too, because because there is this public domain of literature that you can select from and read from, a lot of people don't know that that's just out there for you. So it is a great way for people to maybe discover, oh, well, if I do want to read The Wizard of Oz, I never got around to it, I'll just save this link for later and follow back up with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let us know if you guys have any really hilarious headlines that could describe your favorite novels,
Oh, yeah,
because we're
yeah.
interested in hearing about that. And speaking of getting books in your hands and in front of your eyes, Tiffany has a recommendation for us today. Welcome back, Tiffany. Tell us what's on your nightstand.
Good morning, everyone. I've got another great book for your nightstand. It's called The Underground Railroad by Colson Whitehead. Colson is a Manhattan-raised Harvard grad. He got his start writing book reviews, and this is his latest work. He's the recipient of multiple fellowships, and I'm just such a huge fan. The book got listed on Oprah's site, it got listed on Obama's summer reads, and you're not going to want to miss this one, so be sure to grab it in the flash sale. The book starts out, as you might imagine, it's part of the Underground Railroad, so it's a book about slavery and escape. It's a book about hope and freedom. And the main character, Cora, it starts out with her friend Caesar, and he asks her, do you want to go on the Underground Railroad? Do you want to escape this plantation with me and get out of here? And at first she says no. The scene flashes back to her grandmother, who was stolen from the coast of Africa. It goes through all of the atrocities of her family lineage and her family history, and how she now is an outcast as an 11-year-old girl on this plantation in Georgia. There's no sense of family even among the Africans there, because they're getting traded, they're getting sold, they're getting murdered, and she's really on her own. So she thinks about it. 3 weeks later, Caesar asks her again, do you want to escape with me? At this point, she's seen people escape and not make it back alive. So she has more to go off of. But there's something in her that says, yeah, I want to give it a shot. So Caesar and Cora set out. They've got a plan. They know where they're going. They know who they're going to meet on the Underground Railroad. And they've got a friend that has escaped with them that was not part of the plan. The friend calls for some attention. The hog hunters in the area find them. Cora accidentally murders a young boy while they're on this escape plan. So now not only are they, trying to get out, which is a crime in and of itself, but they're now also murderers. So they get to the next point. The Underground Railroad houses them. They keep going. They get to South Carolina, and the story just unfolds. You're going to have to read it, and I wanted to give you a little quote from the book. She says, whether in the field or underground or in an attic room, America remained her warden. So, the book, again, the adventure part is fascinating, but it's a real piece of Americana history that Colson has brought into the present to remind us, what keeps you going? Where do you have hope when there's so much fear? And where is there life among death? So I really want you guys to read this book. I really loved it. And get it in the flash sale. Beautiful piece for your nightstand.
Thank you, Tiffany, and thank you, Robin, for watching. We'll definitely have to check out The Underground Railroad. And while this book takes inspiration from real-life historical events, don't you always kind of wonder where other authors get their inspiration from? Well, there's a story circulating right now pondering whether or not Nabokov's Lolita might be based on a tale inspired by Salvador Dali.
In 1931, Salvador Dali published a short story titled Reverie, an Erotic Daydream. In this story, there's a young girl named Dulita who is living a similar story to Lolita from Vladimir Nabokov's infamous novel. Delia Ungurunu is the assistant director of the Institute for World Literature at Harvard University, and she's writing a book drawing the parallels between the two stories. She believes Reverie, which was written a decade and a half before Lolita, was Nabokov's influence for the novel. She refers to her work of finding influences as detective criticism. She feels like looking deeper helps us better understand an author's influence and draw lines to their inspiration.
So I like to imagine this going down like Nabokov had his publisher and they were like, okay, well, what's your next book about? What's happening? And he had just read Reverie and he was like, oh, it's about Lolita. And I have a storyline fleshed out for you. And he just like directly wrote it from that story. He barely even bothered to change the name, which is hilarious. So, to me, it seems like he probably did get inspired from that story.
Yeah, I love seeing authors' inspiration and what's behind everything. I don't know, it really gives you this great insight.
Yeah, just to be being creative is a really difficult process, and you're always feeding from other things, and sometimes a little too much.
Yeah, sometimes.
Maybe nothing's original.
Lolita.
There's nothing new under the sun. I mean,
Yeah, that's so true. And we see that a lot in fantasy novels because J.R.R. Tolkien is this godfather of fantasy. And so much of his ideas are borrowed for other fantasy. And people are often saying, you stole that idea from Tolkien or whatever. And of course, he borrowed the idea, but when it's repurposed throughout decades, it's kind of paying homage to the original, right? So it's kind of okay, I think. I'm into it. I'm fine with it.
okay, well, let us know in the comments if there is some book that you've read and then you realize it's really a lot like this one.
Larry Potter.
I wonder if someone stole from something else.
Yeah.
So let us know if you've ever had that experience. And as always, send us a message, share this post, send us a message for a free t-shirt. Yay! We have a V-neck and crew neck styles. So in your message, tell us your size, your style, and your address, and we'll get that out to you.
And don't forget about that flash sale. For 19 minutes after this show, you can get your copy of Colson Whitehead's The Underground Railroad for 99 cents.
Definitely going to get that one.
Yeah, you guys will have to check this one out. It's a really good one.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. We hope you have a great week ahead of you. I'm Mo.
I'm Andrea.
And I'm Morgan.
And we will be back on Wednesday, August 9th at 12 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Central Time. So until then, keep reading, writing, and being awesome. I know we will. Bye.